Chris Peaks here this morning with Johnny Cochran, who is a business salesman living in the Tuscaloosa area. He is a candidate for the Libertarian Party. I forgot which office he's actually seeking. I'll get him to tell me about it in just a second. Johnny, thanks for coming on, man. And how are you doing this morning?
I'm fantastic. Now I've had a couple cups of coffee. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, my pleasure. Come on. I have to have a Dr. Pepper. I've never been able to drink coffee. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Johnny.
Well, I'm a Tuscaloosa resident. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 young boys. And my wife and I both grew up in different parts of the state. I personally grew up in Birmingham, moved there at the end of 2nd grade. And I will never forget my parents, who at the time were living up north in the Northeast, described moving to the South as hitting the lottery, just based on the cost of difference, the cost of living difference. And so grew up in Birmingham, played football for Coach Anderson at Vestavia Hills High, one of the kind of noted and celebrated coaches here in the state. Upon graduation, pursued a business degree at the University of Alabama, which I completed in 2006. Lived in Prattville for a couple of years, working in Montgomery. Decided to take up on a career opportunity that took me over to Atlanta. Met my wife there, got married there, and then, career opportunity presented itself in Baltimore. So lived in Baltimore for about 9 years, where both of my sons were born. And then at the onset of the pandemic, we'd always had a plan to try to move back down south, be closer to family. And with my job, I'm very fortunate that I work from home to set and acquire meetings out in the field all across the country. So I could pretty much work from anywhere. And my wife was able to secure employment. And so we've been back in the Tuscaloosa area now for the past 2 years. Okay,
well, that must be. See, I could never work full time from home because I wouldn't get anything done. I'd just be watching TV or something all day. So,
well, it certainly takes some discipline, and a lot of that is drilled into your head if you're playing sport like high school football, or I've had a lot of neat opportunities. I at the beginning, you introduced me as a sales professional. Certainly that's what I am, but I have a very eclectic set of both work and life experiences. And, what do I mean by that? Well, I haven't just had a white collar job where I just sit in the office and, crunch numbers. My first job out of school was Cintas Corporation and their management trainee program. And so, waking up before the sun comes up, getting on a truck, driving out to the chicken plants in Montgomery, delivering white smocks, and then picking up the used smocks that have all sorts of not pleasant substances on them, to pick them up and launder them. Sanus Ultra Clean, which is their sanitation service, going around to gas stations and bars and restaurants all over that part of the state, and cleaning bathrooms. As far as other types of interesting life experiences, I did train and perform as a professional wrestler for 2 years, and so certainly, so that's certainly a craft that requires a lot of discipline, and you don't just learn everything by sitting in a classroom. I learned by doing. And so by having all these different life experiences certainly has contributed to myself becoming who I am today.
So, sorry, I had to move the dog out of the room because he was beginning to get playful. Yeah. Yeah, he's a 5-month-old puppy, and the last thing I want to do is start fighting with a 5-month-old pit bull on the phone. The Libertarian Party, as I was talking to John Merrill yesterday, he was very impressed with your ballot access, filling for candidates, lieutenant governor, all the way down to county offices. Seems like y'all worked hard to build this up here in the state.
We have, and really the work's just beginning. There was a lot of work done prior to me joining the party. I joined towards the end of 2020. Have been involved in the Republican Party ever since becoming a voting age. So certainly saw a lot of things, how that party operates, things that I disagree with, and when I had moved back from Maryland, which is a heavily gerrymandered blue state, back home to Alabama, a kind of a heavily gerrymandered Republican state, I felt that my energies were best spent trying to help the Libertarian Party. There's a lot of energy in the Libertarian Party, and I've been pleasantly surprised as my campaign is getting ramped up when having conversations with voters. That leads me to believe that we're going to have some interesting results come November.
Well, I know so many people that identify themselves as a libertarian first and then Republican, but it seems like if there was any party I thought would really make some major ground roads, it'd be the Libertarian. You got any theory on why it hasn't gained more support?
Well, I think there is a very predominant narrative that gets put out every election season. I'll try these out and you tell me if you've heard these before. This is the most important election of our lifetimes, right? That's said every election. And I think there is whether it's intentional or not, kind of a campaign of fear that if you believe in limited government, smaller government, balanced budgets, that if you don't vote Republican, you're actively aiding the Democrat Party. And I believe that for a long time. The more I got involved in Republican politics, the more things kind of clicked for me. I saw that it is a very top-down party. I was a volunteer in 2008 and 2012 for the Ron Paul presidential campaign.
Oh, Ron Paul both times.
Yeah, and if you were involved in those campaigns, you saw that there were a lot of I don't know if you want to call them dirty tactics or some other phrase for them, but not just from the corporate media, but also from the Republican Party itself. So, for the longest time, I felt like in order to advance the cause of liberty, that the Republican Party was the vehicle to do that in. And time and time again, your heart breaks a little bit, right? So, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars were disasters. How much blood and treasure did we leave over there? So big things like that. And then small things like, filling out your taxes has got to be one of the most frustrating things as a citizen. And I remember House Speaker Paul Ryan saying, well, we're going to reform the tax code and make it easy as filling out a postcard. Never happened. And so the Republican Party says a lot of things that libertarians like and want, but whenever they're in power, they just don't act on it. It's like they're constantly in a reactionary or defense mode from the left. And, there's never any, things to hang your hat on in terms of what they're doing. And so, what really broke the straw that broke the camel's back is, the Trump presidency. Trump was a force of nature. Whether you love him, hate him, or you're like me, you have a more nuanced opinion, right? So he did some things that I might agree with, and he did some things I don't agree with. But, I thought if there was anybody who could bring the party to heel in what their vision was, and I'm not saying I agree with Trump's vision 100%, but I thought it would be him. And the party actively hampered parts of his presidency. So that's what kind of led me to believe that the Republican Party really isn't the vehicle for liberty in this country. And I reached out to the Alabama Libertarian Party, was attended the state convention last year, became a delegate to the national convention. And so as I've met libertarians all across the country, there is kind of a resurgence going on, and it's very exciting, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
That's pretty interesting. I guess story or build up there with it. And a lot of people don't realize when libertarian, it's not just conservative, and they have a lot of liberal ideologies. What people think. One guy told me the other night. He said something about libertarians believe gay married couples should be protecting their pot plants with an AR-15. I thought, well,
absolutely. And part of what I think is great is there's a lot of things like that, a lot of memes, the meme culture that really, I think, can kind of really try to condense in the most simplified form, what libertarianism is. The meme I saw the other day that spoke to me, had a relevant picture, but the text was, please explain to me why you don't like, libertarianism. Is it because you don't think I can make the best decisions for myself, or that I don't think I can make the best decisions for you? Because ultimately that's what it is. It's you doing what's best for you and your family, assuming that you're not causing harm to others or their property. I don't know what's best for people. I know what's best for me. And, in conjunction with my wife, I think we would discuss what's best for our family. But the folks in Montgomery don't know what's best for us. And the folks in DC who are even further away don't know what's best for us and our family and our community. And so, there are three primary things that are animating my campaign. And that is one of them, is that I think in the future, we're not going to be talking about progressives versus conservatives. I really do think the future, not just in the country, but in the world, is about centralization of power and decentralization of power. China would be an example of an extreme concentration, centralization of power. And I think over time, slowly but surely, the United States has centralized more and more power in Washington, D.C. And, one of my main messages I'm telling folks is I'm not wanting to go to D.C. to tell you how to live or to rule your life. I want to do anything in my power to limit the size and the scope of the federal government, take as much decision-making power as possible, and put it back in the state capitals. And then those that are running for the state offices within the Libertarian Party are then, telling their voters, I want to go to my state capital. I want to take as much decision-making power out of the state legislatures and putting them in your local communities, because, it's a diverse country. I don't think one solution fits all. And that's what our government takes. And we see the results. They're not great, whether it's education, healthcare, or something else.
Now, once the government gets in their hands on it, it's pretty much going to be messed up. Anything, I mean, you can just see it. I've asked this question. I think I forgot to ask some of the other guys, and I remember hearing Ron Paul speak on it one time about what would we do with Social Security now. I mean, you got so many people invested in it, some people securing it, but it's just nothing but just a Ponzi scheme. This was the greatest one ever created. I don't know how it can continue to sustain itself.
Well, the truth is it can't, and the only way we can prolong it is by the monetary policy that's set by the Federal Reserve, right? So, a lot of people, I think, predict, really sudden and fast, disaster scenarios for the country and the economy. I'm in the camp that it's going to be a gradual, continual slide. We see the prices of everything,
Oh gosh, yeah.
That young people need to have the opportunity to opt out.
You cut out on
I think,
you cut out on me for a minute when you said prices on everything. So start from there again.
yeah, that the prices of everything have doubled in the last 2 years, whether that's, the gas station or the grocery store. And so, my stance on Social Security is I don't want to do a rug pull on those that are dependent on the system. But I think, just like prior generations had to do, unimaginable sacrifices, for example, you know, in World War II and the major conflicts of the time. I really think young people are going to have to make a different kind of sacrifice. And I think we're going to have to say, um, if you're young, we need to start planning for Social Security to not be there. And I think there needs to be an opt out mechanism. There would be a way to take care of those that are already there, dependent on it, or going to retire soon. But there needs to be a long, multi-year approach to coming up with a different solution, because essentially all we're doing is kicking the can down and hoping that, the music doesn't stop while we're alive. And I don't think that's fair to my kids. And if my kids ever have kids when they're older, I don't think that's fair to them. So I think adults in the room need to have hard conversations about how to make sure that we take care of those that need help. But at the same time, we have to start planning for a future in which, Social Security isn't going to be as robust as people describe it to be today.
Yeah, I've said I started saying about 10 years ago. Of course, at 45 would be, probably too late to be opting out now. I said, if anybody under 30 or 35 should have the option to opt out, keep the money they've already paid, and then start. And, you can keep it, and then they start investing it on their own, or some kind of retirement account, because the money. Anyway, I'm going to go get how they've invested our money. So with the growth of the Libertarian Party here in the state, are you seeing that nationwide as well? I know you talked about that a little bit about that a while ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, when I attend these events, there's a lot of people that are curious. When I talk to voters out in public, and I ask them things like, are you satisfied with your existing representation? No one has yet to tell me yes. They all say no, I'm not satisfied. And I will hear some of those same talking points that I've heard before as well. I vote Republican because I don't like what Democrats are trying to advance. So instead of voting for something, they're voting against something. And I have some, I think, difficult conversations with them, and point out the fact that the GOP is always on defense. They're always being reactionary. They're not actually advocate. They say a lot of the things that people who want constitutional limited government want, but do they ever actually achieve anything? And the answer is no. And so I do see a lot of enthusiasm later this month at Harry's Bar off of Hargrove Road in Tuscaloosa. I and a few others are hosting a Libertarian Party interest meeting to perhaps form an official affiliate. So it would be the Tuscaloosa County Libertarian Party of the state party. And, I'm talking to folks, and, so far there are a couple people running for office that are going to be there, but there's also people that either aren't involved politically that are come by and have a chat with us, or again, they're disaffected voters. They don't have a lot of hope and inspiration when they look at DC and what's going on there. And so I do think it's going to take time, but I think more and more people will come to their own realization that the two parties, as much as they say they disagree with each other, most of that is performative.
George Wallace once said, "There's not a dime's worth of difference between the two political parties," and I didn't realize what he meant at the time, but now I do. He meant that. Sorry, I had a phone call started ringing, and I had forgot to put it on hold. And they are, both of them are, they've sold out to some kind of special interest groups, somewhere. Sometimes it's the same one. It's just, they're just giving both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Now you were running for, is it the 5th district?
It's the 4th district.
4th district. Okay, that's actually the district that I live in.
Well, I'd like to chat with you more and see what I would have to do to earn your vote.
We'll have to do that some more. So you'll be running against Mr. Aderholt.
Yes. Now that Shelby is gone, Aderholt will be the longest serving member of the Alabama delegation. Fun fact, he's been there for 25 years, which is a long time considering I would say most Republican voters are in favor of term limits and don't want people to spend their careers there. When I was a freshman in high school 25 years ago, the national debt was $5 trillion. It has 6x'd in 25 years. It's 30 trillion. Now, anyone who wants to call themselves fiscally conservative or fiscally responsible, going from 5 trillion to 30 trillion is nothing short of failure. And he might be able to give some sort of political spin answer about, well, I'm fighting for you and this, that, or the other. But let me tell you this. If I was in office, I would be known as the new digital age Paul Revere. Just like everyone in the country knows who AOC is or Marjorie Taylor Greene is, I would be known as that guy who's sounding the alarm bell that the national debt is out of control. And, again, the Republicans say they're for limited government. The great Ronald Reagan did not shrink government. He merely slowed the growth of it for the first part of his administration. And then later on, it crept up. And so, again, these are hard conversations to be had. The Republicans say everything that limited constitutional small government voters want to hear, but they don't deliver. And so, I feel like, I heard former Congressman Amash speak at the National Libertarian Convention, and he said something that was very startling to me. Now, I follow politics mainly because I don't like what happens in D.C., but I wasn't aware of this, and I'd like to try it on you. Did you know that no amendments have been offered from the floor of the House since 2016?
No.
So basically what that means is you do not have a representative in Congress unless you have the ear of Schumer, Pelosi, McConnell, or McCarthy, right? They're the 4 puppet masters who are controlling everything, what gets brought to the floor, when it gets brought to the floor, what's in the bill that gets brought to the floor. And if you have an elected representative, up until 2016, they were allowed to offer amendments from the floor that could get an up or down vote. That has not happened since 2016. And again, so I don't think Alabamians want bobblehead politicians that just go up there and fundraise, say what their base wants to hear, and then grandstand on any national media outlet that will have them. I mean, they want results. And I'm almost 40 years old. I'm not seeing anyone passionately advancing liberty in DC. And that's what I want to do for the people of District 4.
If anything, some of it's been taken away. People, it sounds great, but people never really realized what the Patriot Act was all involved in there. It's like, do you not understand what they're basically giving the government the right to do? They had no idea warrantless wiretaps. It sounds like a good move, but
yeah.
You spoke of
a general rule of thumb, Chris, is whatever the name of the bill is, it's probably very deceiving.
Yeah, yeah, because
That's
you're not,
a good rule of
you're
thumb to
not
live by.
vote against it. You're not a patriot.
I had a
Okay,
lot
I
of
got you.
friends. Uh,
Got you right there.
I had a lot of friends um, decided to enlist and join and went overseas. And so, certainly, was there a response warranted? Absolutely. We should have done a military operation to immediately destroy and wipe out whatever kind of network they had set up in Afghanistan. But the fact that we stayed there for 20 years, lost a lot of lives, a lot of wounded people, both physically and psychologically, and all that money that was spent over there, only to leave, which is the right thing, and then to leave millions of dollars of equipment that our tax dollars paid for. It's just, it's disgusting. I don't know how else to say it. And, you know, um, they named it the Patriot Act because who wants to vote against being,
Yeah.
if they have an act that's called "We Want to Save the Puppies Act," you need to read that bill, because there's something in there about not saving puppies that you need to be made aware of. But they wouldn't know that because they don't actually read the bills. So, you know, there you go. They just, whatever Daddy McConnell and Daddy McCarthy tell the Republican bobblehead politicians, you need to vote this way, they do it.
I
So,
like that bobblehead politicians. I want to touch on one other thing real quick. You just talking about the budget. I remember when Clinton was running for president against Bush and Perot. And Perot probably would have been the best person we ever had in there, because I remember those infomercials. He had it down to the nickel where the dollar was being spent. And then the deficit was like $4 trillion. And
mhm.
that's at the end of the world. Like you said, now it's up to $30 trillion. We just keep printing money. Um, oh, sorry. Um, if we got in there, would probably go crazy if we seen what is in that budget, because I would hate to see where this money is being spent, because you can't tell me the money's not there, that we can't be self sufficient, that we're going $6 trillion in debt every single year. And it's not the amount of, I keep telling people, they want to blame the evil 1%ers or 350,000 people, top income earners. I said, okay, you want to put them in a higher, 2% higher income bracket? Okay, you've made about $8 million more than what you did. I said, it's the expenditures that's going out. It's not the money that's coming in.
Mhm.
And until we get that under control.
Absolutely. I hear sometimes pundits or celebrities say, I'd gladly pay more in taxes and things like that. I think we live in a country in which, if money is going to be taken away from us involuntarily, right, it gets sucked into a vacuum into Washington, D.C. And then from there, it's like, well, we just have to hope and pray that it's being used appropriately. If you were to donate a large sum of money to a nonprofit, or even a small sum of money, not only will they send you a thank you note, but typically they will show you the impact of your donation. So your $100 donation is gonna,
Oh, yeah.
buy this needy family, 2 weeks worth of food or whatever it is. I mean, DC is a black hole. It just sucks up all of our money, and there's a whole industry that's developed by insiders or relatives of Congress people, or friends of Congress people in the know how to game the system so that they win these contracts for ridiculous sums of money. I read a lot of articles, one in particular recently, about people who were basically scamming the government from the pandemic, promising that they could get PPE and all this stuff, and you know 1 or 2 person LLCs win $1 million contract, and then they actually don't deliver the goods, and it's like, well, I guess we just waste millions of dollars, and that's not a big deal. There's no consequences. There's no accountability. And so I would be willing to listen to an argument that, hey, we're going to take your money and we're going to use it, and let me show you in fine detail where it's going towards. But that's not the case. And so I think a society in which, you know, good ideas rise to the top through open dialogue and conversation. People in the communities will help each other. America's a very generous nation. When there's natural disasters here or abroad, there's a lot of money that goes to try to help folks. I was talking to another local candidate here who said he was talking to some volunteer firefighters, and that they had been told that some money had been earmarked for them for PPE related to the pandemic, so that they actually would have gloves and masks and whatever they needed if they had to provide, life-saving services out in the field. They never got that money. And when they try to follow up with their local state legislature, they said, oh yeah, the money's there, just call so-and-so and they'll get it to you. And I think, of whatever the amount of money they were told, they did get some of it, but it was like a tenth of what they've been told. So what happened to that other money? Where did it go?
You'd be curious. I actually did that one time. I sat down and I looked at this money. They had a sheet where all of it was allocated. And first of all, most of it was a huge waste of money. Then there was like $19 million missing from the first round of COVID money. Then the $4 billion were set aside to build for the prison. It came up missing. And now they're wanting to take the other $4 billion from the COVID to build with the prisons. Like, who is accountable for all this money? And I started calling places like, they said, well, you got to go to the comptroller's office and talk to one of these 15 people in there. I said, y'all just got just a whole bunch of people sitting around writing checks and nobody's checking out. And another place, I'll tell you this one. You remember back when Larry Langford passed that $1 billion tax to build the stadium?
Yes.
Well, they had the money. Larry said that. He said, go a bit. He said, we've got the money. So I asked the councilman, and I'm not going to name his name. I'm friends with him. I said, well, what happened to that $1 billion? Because Larry talked about, y'all got the $1 billion. Don't build. There's no reason not to build the stadium. He said, well, that was money that was allocated to the project. I said, okay. He said, once the project was canceled, it got redirected into the councilman's districts. I was like, okay. He said, after it was redirected, they redistributed it to where they thought it was needed best. I said, okay, so y'all stole $1 billion.
Yeah. I mean, look, the people are taxed too much. Okay. We're taxed on our income. We tax on what we spend. If we buy property, we pay taxes on our homes, on our cars. If our investments do well, we're taxed on that. When we die, we get taxed. I mean, we're just taxed so much. And to top it off, the Federal Reserve and the loose monetary policy, they turn the printers on and they print a whole bunch of money. Now, nowadays, they're actually not printing the money. They're just changing a couple decimal points in a computer system. But the reality is, regular people and the most vulnerable among us are hurting, and we're hurting bad. We have to make decisions on, well, I used to spend $100 a week on groceries, and now when I get back, it's $150, $175, $200 a week. And I want to live in a country where a middle class individual, a job, could support a spouse and a couple of kids and live comfortably. And inflation is the stealth tax that, you don't see it right away. But if the Federal Reserve's own target is 2%, which we know it's more, right? They reported the other day, it's like 8% officially. And we all know it's higher than that. And that happens year after year after year. When you get your 2% raise, if you're lucky at work for kind of a cost of living thing, you are actually in a worse financial position than you were the year before. So the people who own all the assets, their $600,000 house, is now worth $800,000. So they're feeling pretty good. But the people who, are paying rent or trying to buy that first starter home, they can't. And so we really have to get sound money back to America, and we have to reduce the tax burden. One of the lamest things that a person can throw at a libertarian is, what about the roads? Who's going to make the roads? If I had 30 or 40% of my income that's taken from me involuntarily, voluntary society that would just say, look, in order to build this road, it's going to cost X. Who can chip in? And if I'm not having 40% of my income stolen via taxation, and the remaining money I have isn't stolen from inflation, I think you'd be surprised at the generosity of the American people and the communities that want their communities to get better. And we would support infrastructure projects, waterworks, roads, things of that nature, because that's what our local economies need to survive and thrive.
When you mentioned 30, 40% of your income, when you throw in things like a driver's license, that's another tax, a hidden tax. Car tag, that's a hidden tax. There's a lot of hidden taxes out there that just like we're talking about, up to you sure be rail against this public service commission. I'm sure they're gonna. I was told I was not one of their most popular people down there in Montgomery.
And there's, like you said, so many hidden taxes. I met with a small business owner recently who owns a couple of the establishments here in Tuscaloosa. Okay. That serve adult beverages. And part of that conversation, he said, I got to pay a cabaret tax. And at first I was confused. I said, Cabernet, you got to pay like a wine tax? He said, no, I got to pay a tax that gives my customers permission to dance in my establishment. Okay. That money that's paid for that tax, but that is a ridiculous tax. And I don't know if that's a state law or if that's in the state constitution. I know we have one of the most convoluted, long state constitutions in the country, but
longest in the world.
There are so many things that were dinged on tax-wise that money could go towards hiring another person, giving the people who work their raises. And so, when the government gets involved, rational entrepreneurs and business makers have to make decisions that they wouldn't have otherwise. And they have to divert capital that they think is going to improve their business, improve their employees, improve their service to their clients. And they have to divert that to the government. And like we've talked about, it's kind of a black hole. Money goes in, and sure, you see road construction projects and things like that. But, I don't think we get good bang for our buck for any dollar that goes to the government.
There was a lady and her opponent I really liked. He was the first person I interviewed last summer. His name Micah Messer, and he told me to look up some taxes she had backed, and something about, you see these kids with their little eyebrow notches or whatever. Looks like they just basically took a clipper and buzzed through them. They're charging like somebody who does that like $800 a year in licenses and fees and stuff like that just to do that eyebrow thing. I mean, that is a crippling small. I mean, that's ridiculous. Almost $100 a month just to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, here are people, right, who want to work. They have a skill that, other members of the community value and are willing to exchange their hard-earned money for. And, we hit them with licensing. And, that prevents, people who, maybe otherwise would be working a low-paying job. Maybe they would be on welfare assistance. And here they are trying to do something about it. And now they're getting taxed or hit with licensing fees. And it's not right. And we need to do something about it.
So when Johnny gets to Congress, what's his first bill going to be?
To be honest, Well, first we got to get to Congress, right? No, there are lots of state and local libertarians that have been elected all over the country at the state and local level. There has never been a federally elected libertarian. So first, we're going to have to make history, and I can tell you a little bit about what my strategy is to help make that happen. But when I get to Congress, the number one thing that's on my agenda is to help remedy the pain that people are experiencing right here and now, and that's inflation. We have to turn off the printing press. We need to pause federal spending. And I know that there's going to be people who call me all sorts of nasty names because I don't want the government to keep growing. But we have to pause federal spending, and we need to start reducing the size of government. And I'm okay doing that across the board. You know, I think Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky, had a penny plan. We wanted to cut 1% out of everything. I mean, that's not going to make a big dent in things, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And I think that the more the government regulates industries, the more they print money, the more and more we're going to see market forces drive prices higher. And the people are I want to live a good comfortable life. I want to be able to take my family out to eat, once every couple of weeks and not feel like it's breaking the bank. I want to take them. I want to take them to Gulf Shores maybe once a year, every other year. And the reality is, the way prices are spiraling out of control, I mean, that's only going to be something that, the super affluent can afford. And so all of my energies would be focused on restoring sound money principles to the American currency system, and trying to tackle inflation by pausing and then reducing the size of government. And I think over time, and I don't think that long either, that that we might see some of this price activity hopefully return more to the mean as opposed to the all-time highs they are now.
Yeah, because every time I go to the store, I look and it's something's 15 cents higher than it was a week ago, 20 cents higher, 30 cents higher, 40 cents higher.
Or the size of the package is a little bit smaller and you didn't notice. That's called shrinkflation, right? So the box used to say 16 ounces on it. Now it says 12 ounces.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The first time when I noticed it, 6 months ago or so, when I'd go get a biscuit in the morning, one biscuit would fill me up. And then all of a sudden I'm eating 2 bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits and still hungry. And I started looking at those biscuits. And I'm like, man, they are a third of the size of what they used to be. I mean, they have cut that and they went up on them. So I'm glad you brought that up too.
Yep.
John, I'm not going to keep you much any longer, Johnny. I know you've got a probably busy day making phone calls, but let's talk again and for this and see if we can't get you elected as the first Libertarian Congressman from the 4th District.
Let's do it. And if you'd like, I can close on what my message is to the voters.
Absolutely.
This is, I think, the most exciting race. And of course, I guess I might be biased because I'm in it. This is the reddest district in the state, in one of the red states in the country. Okay. The Democrat, Rick Neighbors, got trounced last year by Aderholt, 80 to 20%. So if you're one of that 20%, okay, you're either voting pro-Democrat or you're voting anti-Republican. I can go ahead and tell you right now, Neighbors is going to get trounced again because last year was 80 to 20 and the district leans so heavy red. So voting for Neighbors, voting for the Democrat in this race is a wasted vote. Okay. Now, if you're independent or you're part of that, I talked to a buddy of mine the other day who said he's considering just giving up voting. He's so frustrated with the state of the world that he just doesn't think voting makes a difference. My message to him was every man, woman, and child in this country owes over $90,000 as part of the national debt. Okay. Everything in DC, for the most part, great place to visit if you want to go see some museums or some monuments. But the fact that no amendments have been made from the House floor in 2016 is we don't actually live in a constitutional republic anymore. It's controlled by those four two Democrat and two Republican leaders that run the House. So my message to him was, if you want to shock the system, we got to send somebody in there that's going to shake things up. And I think the most exciting thing is, if you're a Republican voter in this election, you're in good shape. The Biden administration is a disaster. The GOP, no doubt in my mind, is going to win and win. Northeastern industrialists. Okay. And that was because they wanted to form an opposition to the heavily controlled Democrat Alabama state government way back when in its time. So Republican voters are going to get what they want in this election on a broad scale. They're going to get Republican control of Congress. One thing that Republicans tell Democrats, right? Let's say minority communities, they say, the Democrat Party takes your vote for granted. Trump famously said, vote for me. What do you have to lose?
I remember that.
Okay. My argument is that the Republican Party takes Republican voters for granted. And I get it. If you're a small constitutional Republican or little L libertarian, you don't want to vote for Democrats. You vote for Republicans because it's the least bad of the two options. In this election, you have a chance to vote a true libertarian, a small government constitutional, Ron Paul Republican. So out of any election in the state, this is the most exciting, because this is a chance for Republican voters to tell the Republican Party, my vote will not be taken for granted. Aderholt has been there for 25 years. I didn't, when I talk to voters and ask them if they knew who the representative is, they don't even know his name. What has he done the last 25 years? He's probably voted mostly the way Republican voters want. But again, if I was there for 25 years and the debt went from 5 trillion to 30 trillion, you better believe I'd be a household name in America as that guy who's screaming about the debt. And so this is an opportunity for Republican voters to get what they want, Republican control of Congress, and have one true small government representative in D.C. by voting Johnny C. Cochran for their congressperson. So that's why I'm excited.
That's a great message right there. I'll tell you something. We'll I'll tell you something. But I think, that you said, I think Aderholt's been there. I think he got elected in 94, because I think I was a senior in high school. I think he got elected with the Republican takeover.
Wikipedia is not a great source of information. But that is, I believe, where I pulled that initial comment from. I'm pulling it up in real time. He's been serving the fourth since 1997. And look, if you're a Republican, okay, Aderholt's going to be fine, right? Yeah. Whenever people get bounced from Congress, they find a great job on K Street being a lobbyist. He's going to be okay. But you have the opportunity to have a fighter and someone who's going to shake things up. And just like people know who AOC or Marjorie Taylor Greene is, they're going to know who Johnny C. Cochran is.
All right, Johnny, we'll talk again, man.
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Very much. And